What is Gucci, everybody? Welcome back to Boo TV. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. And let's get into today's episode. Let's talk a little bit about Mr. Timothy Duncan. All right. You know, we consider Tim Duncan largely a top 10 player. For most people, a top 5 player of all time. For some people. And he is among the pantheon of great players that has ever played the game of basketball. But I notice when we start picking apart the greatest players that have ever played in basketball, especially the players in the modern NBA, we tend to pick apart the little small details and things and down moments and poor performances and like to ridicule players on small moments of a largely successful career, right? Kobe Bryant gets it. LeBron James gets it. Michael Jordan gets it. Magic Johnson gets it. But I never hear anybody ever say anything about Tim Duncan. As if Tim Duncan had this literally perfect career and did nothing wrong. And I can see how that stigma would stick to him considering the organization that he's on and his demeanor. You know, you couple his demeanor with that, clean image, clean cut organization, managed by Popovich himself. Tim Duncan coddled by Popovich himself, groomed under his wing. That really even helped manifest Tim Duncan's own personality even more. It's easy to really forget that Tim Duncan did have some poor playoff performances and poor NBA performances in general. People look at Kobe and they say, okay, well, he has 5 championships, but 3 of them he didn't get Finals MVP. Well, 2 of them Tim Duncan didn't get Finals MVP, and at least with Kobe, you could say, well, he played with the most dominant center, the most dominant player in the modern era of the NBA. It makes sense that even as great as Kobe Bryant is and was, Shaq was taking those MVPs home. But at least for one of Duncan's championships, he was technically the best player on the team, but not for that series. So no one ever says, but Tim Duncan didn't only got 3 and 2 of those Finals MVPs he didn't get. He got carried in 2 of those series. Nobody ever mentions that. Just saying. I just like how people pick and choose when they want to make arguments and who they want to stick them against. All right. And y'all see where I'm getting at. Tim Duncan was by no means perfect. In fact, Tim Duncan wasn't playing at a prime Tim Duncan performance level for more than 10 years of his career. No, Tim Duncan started declining somewhere at year 10 or 11. He took a sharp downhill, a spiral down, and he wasn't playing at a prime level, at an MVP level, say as much as a LeBron James or a Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant made it to year 16. And it was only by him tearing his Achilles when he started going downhill. It was because of an injury. And I know Tim Duncan came in more NBA ready. But even if you want to wash the 2 years before Kobe really came into his own, he still performed a longer period of time at a high level than Duncan. All right. So Tim Duncan won a championship in 99. 2003, 2005, 2007, 2014. Of those 3 years, he acquired his championship, or he acquired his Finals MVP in those first 3 championship years, 99, 03, and 05. At no point in his career did Tim Duncan ever go back-to-back. So at no point did he ever defend his throne as the NBA champion. He was always dethroned, him and his team, at some point. All right. Now, let's talk about the 2007 NBA Finals. People, we have to talk about it. Tim Duncan had some blemishes, had some blunders, had some poor performances. All right. Now, if y'all remember, the 2000 NBA Finals was LeBron James and the Cavaliers appearance. LeBron James' first NBA Finals appearance. And yes, the San Antonio Spurs won. And some may say, well, they won, so why should we pick apart his poor performance? Well, the Lakers won in 2010, but people like to call out Bean's performance in Game 7. Bad shooting performance, but an excellent performance on all other sides of the court. He didn't shoot well, but he did everything else at a high level, including rebounding. Top rebounder in the game. I think he had 16 rebounds or something like that. So and the reason I bring that up is because we have to keep it consistent here. Tim Duncan was not perfect and was not perfect in every series. All right. Tim Duncan did not go to the finals every year of his career. He played a long year and only made it to the finals, 6 times? He only lost once, right? I think his only loss was to the Miami Heat. In that Game 7, Tim Duncan played poorly, especially in that last minute. But we'll get to that. All right, so if we look at that 2007 NBA Finals, Tim Duncan was outplayed by Drew Gooden and Zydrunas Ilgauskas. He was outplayed by Drew Gooden and Zydrunas Ilgauskas. And people like to say, well, that LeBron James team didn't have any help. Well, it seems like he had a lot of goddamn help to me. It seems like he had a lot of goddamn help to me. Because those two boys really helped neutralize Duncan. And y'all remember, Tony Parker got MVP. All right. For that series, Tim Duncan averaged 18, 11 rebounds, shooting 44% from the field. Now, 44% from the field in 2007, before the league really started picking up its pace league round, and a little bit more defense was played back then than what is now. 44% is fine if you're a point guard or a shooting guard. That's acceptable. That's one made shot away from a 50% field goal percentage. But for a power forward or center, 44% field goal percentage is not good. Anyone that close to the basket should be hitting at least 50% field goal percentage, especially if you are on the level of Tim Duncan. You're going to be held to a higher standard. You're that close to the basket. But he was held in check. I mean, you look at the numbers, 18, 11, well, that's acceptable for some people. But for somebody at the level of Tim Duncan, and you're getting played by Drew Gooden and Zydrunas Ilgauskas, you got to give me at least 22, bro. At least 22. Think about this. Tony Parker got MVP. He lit the Cavs up. And it's not to say that, oh, well, I get it. Tim Duncan was the type of player to, force the issue if his shot isn't going. However, the shots he took, he did attempt the shots, but he did not make the shots. It'd be one thing if he was like, all right, I ain't going to attempt as much. I'm going to let Parker do it. No, you still took the field goals that close to the basket, but you weren't connecting. All right. So like I said, 18-11 is very acceptable in the NBA Finals for most people at his position, but not Tim Duncan. Could you imagine if, and that's the other thing, Tim Duncan, like I said, this was not old Tim Duncan. This was prime Tim Duncan. Hadn't even been in the league 10 years yet, or was just approaching 10 years. He was still performing at a high level, or supposed to be performing at a high level at the time. Could you imagine, if Dwayne Wade, and that's Dwayne Wade too, because Dwayne Wade, that's a bad example because Dwayne Wade and Tony Parker are on different levels. All right. Could you imagine if for Kobe's last 2 championships, Pau Gasol or Lamar Odom had got MVP over Kobe Bryant, Ron Artest had got MVP over Kobe Bryant in 2010. Could you imagine the backlash Kobe would get if somebody of that caliber had got MVP over him? The critics would never let that go. Never let that go. Never let that go. And I get it, Tony Parker was a fantastic point guard, but he ain't on Tim Duncan's level. All right? Cut it out. cut it out. But that never gets brought up. That never gets brought up. And then in 2014, Kawhi Leonard got MVP instead of Tim Duncan. Kawhi averaged more points, less rebounds than Duncan, but Kawhi also got it for the amazing defense he played on LeBron James. He had more steals, he had more blocks, more assists, so on and so forth. But I'm not even going to hold that one against Duncan because Duncan was much older. Duncan was much older at the time. He was out of his prime. But people also don't use that against Tim Duncan. Could you imagine if LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Bean Bryant, for one of those championships they have, they were outside of their prime and more or less got carried by the team or by another player? Could you imagine the backlash and how they would discredit Bron or MJ or Bean had they not been the sole driving force, the undisputed leader outside of their prime bubble for one of their championships? Could you imagine? But we don't hear anything about it because Duncan is just perfect player and he never did anything wrong, and you know, he's just that guy and nobody will ever say anything about him, anything bad about him because he is Tim Duncan and the franchise that he played for. He's not a controversial player. Duncan is non-controversial. He's not polarizing. So nobody wants to talk about it. But I'm here to remind you guys. Not only that, I think in the 2014, I could be wrong. I think it was 2014 Western Conference Finals against the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think they lost 4-2. But in Game 4, maybe it wasn't the Western Conference Finals. Maybe it was I think it might have been the second round versus OKC. I think it was the second round. But they were up 2-1, and then the pivotal Game 4 where they had a chance to go up 3, they could have went up 3-1 had they won the game. Tim Duncan went the entire game without a single field goal. He did not score a single point. I think he's ended up scoring like 2 or 3 points all at the free throw line. But that box score said 0 out of something. I don't remember what it was. 0 out of what? 0 out of 12, 0 out of 15, 0 out of 20. In a very pivotal game, he could not score the basketball at all. Now, could you imagine if that happened to LeBron James and they ended up losing a playoff series because of that? Could you imagine? We wouldn't hear the end of it. Mike, Kobe, Bron, Magic, Bird. Well, probably not so much Bird because Bird had some really bad playoff performances as well. Never gets mentioned either, to be honest. As we get further away from that time period, people tend to forget and things don't get brought up anymore. But I'm here to set Bird definitely had some horrible performances. Make no mistake about it. And even in 2013, now I can't remember if it was a playoff game or not. You know what? No, I think that game, I think it was 2015. Did I say 2014? I think it was 2015 against the OKC Thunder where he went without a field goal. I think it was 2015. Y'all could double check. If it ain't 15, it's 14, but I think it's 15. But even in 2013, Tim Duncan had another lackluster game. I can't remember if it was a playoff game or not, but I think he shot like 1 for 12 or something crazy like that. All right, so I got Tim Duncan's stats up right here. Now, I'm not going to hold anything against Tim Duncan for not having many high-scoring seasons. All right, Tim Duncan only averaged over 25 points per game in the regular season once for his career. But I'm not going to hold that against him. I watched Tim Duncan. I know what he was able to do. However, he played under Greg Popovich. And for that reason, it's going to hold you back a little bit on your stats. You know, he adhered to Popovich play style and the system by which they played. Also, considering that Tim Duncan played, you know, a large part of his career in an era where they were starting to transition more to where we are now, scoring was still, the pace was still slower. There weren't as many possessions. And when you're in an offense where Popovich is going to work the ball around until you get the best shot possible, all the possessions weren't already there, and Tim Duncan was already really not considered a scorer per se. You couple all that in with Popovich's system, he's not going to have many opportunities to, really pop off for big scoring seasons. So I'm not going to hold that against him at all. I watched Duncan play, and I know when Duncan wanted to, bless us with his dominance on a scoring, and I've seen him do it. When his number was called upon, he can do it. 9 times out of 10, Duncan can do it. But, sometimes it is what it is. You play in the system, you play for a certain coach, they're going to hold you back. But that's why you got to watch these games so you can understand context. But a lot of people don't do. All right, they just look at stats. Oh, yeah, that doesn't tell the story. I know Tim Duncan could have averaged 25 points per game for 5 or more seasons. Easily, had he had another coach, or had he pushed the envelope or pop. But Tim Duncan was a very non-controversial player, So with that being said, I'm looking at Duncan's season stats. He had one regular season where he averaged over 25 points a game, but outside of that, and don't get me wrong, a 10, 11-year, 12-year prime bubble is actually really, really, really impressive. But after I think year 11 or 12, he went on a sharp decline, right? So I would say where his major dip off was around 2009 season. He was at 17 points per game, all right, but still double-digit rebounds. But in 2010, he went to 13 points per game, 8 rebounds. You might as well say 9, 8.9. 15, 17, 15, 13, 8. All right, a little bit seesaw, but somewhat of a consistent downhill. And to be expected as you get older, less minutes, you're not as good as you used to be, physical limitations, things of that nature. But I look at other players who were able to perform still at a high level for, up to year 16, up to year 14. LeBron James now up to year 20. But, I see other players whose decline was due to injury, right? They were performing at a very high level up until they got injured. And, there's a reason for that. But Duncan never, ever suffered any career-ending, career-altering, season-ending injuries to that level to give them a reason for his inability to play at a very high level later in his career. Right? He doesn't get that pass. So while a 10, 11, 12-year prime is pretty normal for some players, I'm not going to say most, for some players that are at an elite level, he was not able to sustain it for a longer amount of time. And you can also contribute that to how the game changed from under his feet. All right? The push for the perimeter. However, if he was still able to perform at a very high level and be a player of that caliber, which we were used to seeing inside that bubble, that prime bubble, not the bubble, he would still be able to contribute even with the game changing and moving more to a perimeter. Right? Even the dominant bigs to this day still are able to make an impact on the game, even though they're not outside shooting threes all day. Not every team always runs a stretch 5, but most do, or most 5s can shoot. Joel Embiid can shoot, but he sticks to the post 85, 90% of the time. He's dominating inside the post or on the block. But anyway, that's all I got to say, man. Tim Duncan definitely had his... Oh, no. That's not all I got to say. Game 7 versus the Miami Heat. Right, that was 2015. That was 2015, right? NBA Finals. Under 1 minute left. Tim Duncan, if I remember correctly, missed 2 easy bunnies at the rim to tie the game with under a minute left. Actually, I think it was under 50 seconds left at that. Missed 2 easy. Could you imagine if Game 7 of the NBA Finals down by 2 points, LeBron or MJ or Bean missed a bunny at the rim to tie the game? We would not hear the end of it. All I'm saying is Tim Duncan should not be absolved and be excused for his blunders and his performances if we aren't going to excuse the other players that sit at the same dining table with him in the pantheon of greats. All I'm saying is let's keep it consistent, people. And I'm sure Duncan has had many other, not going to say many other, but has had other bad playoff performances because he's had first round exits, he's had second round exits, he's had third round exits. Absolutely. People don't hang that over his head either. They like to bring up Michael's and Kobe's first round exits or second round or early playoff exits, however you want to look at it. You don't hear nothing about Duncan's. You don't hear nothing. Anyway, let me know what you think about it. Do you remember these performances by the man Duncan? Where do you have Tim Duncan ranked in your pantheon of greats, in your top 10? Let me know. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree. Let me know if you think there was something I missed. And like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll catch you all on the next one. We out, baby.